The two panniers and top case were filled. There were big dry bags strapped to the top of each pannier, and then there was the pillion. We rode up to the Citadel for a great view of Halifax, and it also gave me a chance to get comfortable with the added weight and dynamics of the bike. The planned route took us through Dartmouth and then to the coast where we joined the Maritime route, traversing the eastern shore of Nova Scotia. It was a windy day, and the chop on the ocean was revealed in the distance. We popped in and out of small harbor towns and coves and continued to make our way up the coast. I was enjoying the newness of the adventure. It wasn't about finding the next new thing and that new thing having to be better than the last. I was simply glad to be on the journey. Clearly, you don't always have to travel far from home to find those things that are most fulfilling for you, but maybe you have to travel far to realize that sometimes. After a long morning of riding, we stopped for lunch in Sherbrooke before heading north by northeast to the island of Cape Breton. Our goal was to get to Baddock for the evening, which would be the starting point for embarking on the Cabot Trail tomorrow. Dark black clouds dogged us for a few hours, threatening to rain. We made it to Cape Breton Island without getting wet, but the sky was ominous. Arriving in Baddock, we found an inn, settled in, had dinner, and went for a walk. The Cabot Trail and the Cape Breton Highlands were supposed to be iconic, and we were looking forward to a fresh start tomorrow. The Cabot Trail is a big draw to Nova Scotia, especially for motorcyclists. We took the counterclockwise route. This would ensure that we were in the lane closest to the water and the edge of the cliffs. The sun was shining and the temperatures were in the low 50s and steadily climbing. Immediately out of Baddock on the Cabot Trail, the riding took a new turn, so to speak. There was a sense that more of what we were encountering was unique to Nova Scotia. Green mountains and forests as a backdrop to coves, lighthouses, and harbor towns, all bumping up to the ocean. This was Nova Scotia. We stopped around Ingonish Beach and had the first glimpses of those iconic Canadian maritime cliffs touching the ocean. Not too much further up the trail, we parked by a beach and had our sandwiches. Passing into the Cape Breton Highlands National Park, we continued our way north, and then cutting across the island to the west side, we took a detour off the Cabot Trail. It was a spectacular diversion to St. Margaret Village near Capstick and Askey Bay, to the tip of Cape Breton Island and Cabot Straits on the Gulf of St. Lawrence. I believe it's the most northerly point of Nova Scotia. We were the only people there, the views were epic, the ocean was fierce, the waves were crashing onto the cliffs, and we were smiling. I rode the motorcycle right to the tip of the pier. The water was rushing into the harbor. We paused for a bit and absorbed the incredible goodness of our surroundings. Minutes later, heading back toward the Cabot Trail, I had to resist just turning around again to experience the grandeur one more time. Through the highlands to Pleasant Bay, we made the turn south toward Cheticamp. This was the part of the Cabot Trail whose pictures make it to many postcards, or nowadays Facebook, Instagram, or a screensaver. The riding was brilliant. The ride on the Cabot Trail today lived up to expectations. We were enjoying the trip and the experience of new places. One of the themes that kept popping up in our conversations had to do with the uniqueness of a place. Was it unique to where we were? Did it define the place? Or could we simply be in any one of a dozen or so other places doing the same thing? The answer varied. There have been certain things that were unique to Atlantic Canada, and more specifically Nova Scotia. The lighthouses, harbor towns and coves, and a brief stretch of the Cabot Trail. There were many other things so far that one could find closer to home. That didn't diminish how much we were enjoying our time, but it did give us an appreciation for being able to have a similar experience closer to home. Cheticamp was a small area by any standard, but for Nova Scotia and the Cabot Trail, it was a destination. We selected a hotel with a superb location, view, and a restaurant. It was right on the Cheticamp boardwalk and would provide a great sunset view. There was a recurring theme: eating too much, drinking too much, and feeling very full. A bottle of Nova Scotia white wine, mussels, chowder, haddock, some Arcadian fish dish, and 2 desserts later, we stumbled to the chairs outside our room for a view of the sunset and the water.
Together we go down to the ocean for you to sail away. Trying not to show
We decided to head to Charlottetown. This would give us 3 evenings on Prince Edward Island, with a solid day off the bike and another day to explore the island. The ride south on the Cabot Trail revealed some super roads and views. Through forests, cliffs along the Gulf, and desolate towns we rode. Leaving the Cabot Trail, we were on the Keldia Trail, which took us through areas with deep Scottish and Irish heritage. The ride was serene and enjoyable. Crossing over the Cancel Causeway by Port Hastings, we departed Cape Breton Island. There's the Confederation Bridge, or a ferry that gets you from Nova Scotia to PEI. The route time is basically the same, except the ferry gives you about an hour and a half less time in the saddle. Arriving at the ferry, we were directed to the lane for motorcycles. The ferry was free in this direction, and the crossing would take about an hour and a half. We drove onto the ferry and I tied the bike down. The crossing was smooth and we were pulling into PEI. The call to return to your vehicles was made. Kickstand up, Jeanette on the bike, and we were the first ones off the ship. About 45 minutes later, we were cruising around downtown. We found our hotel and checked in. It was a brisk walk to the restaurant. Afterwards, we walked around Charlottetown a bit. We called it a night and went back to the hotel. It was a great day full of so many experiences. It felt like we lived a lifetime in one day. Today was a much-needed rest day off the road and an opportunity to hang out in Charlottetown for the day. We took a long walk around Charlottetown. It was the perfect day to be out and about. The weather was cool and sunny, and there was a farmer's market on Queen Street. We strolled around for a bit, admiring the history and the activity in Charlottetown on a Sunday. Once we built up an appetite, we stepped into the Con House, a brewery and pub steeped in history. Great food, a beer-tasting flight, and more beer put smiles on our faces. We walked the harbor. Charlottetown is the birthplace of modern-day Canada. There was a fair amount of history there as well. We grabbed a bite to eat in a farm-to-table restaurant. The food was thoughtfully prepared and measured up. There were great indie tunes playing, and the atmosphere in the places we had stopped into were noticeably hip and chill. Waking up today, there was no need to pack up the bike. It was a good feeling to go for a ride without the bike fully loaded. After some coffee and a small bite, we hopped on the motorcycle to ride some of Prince Edward Island. The mandatory stop in Cavendish and Green Gables was the first on the list. Both were made famous by the Anne of Green Gables novel and various TV shows over the years. Probably one of the most famous fictitious characters to come to life. We headed into Prince Edward Island National Park and explored the campgrounds and the beaches. The views were incredible, and it is truly a place to visit when on PEI. The coastline was rugged, and while there were people on the beach, it still had the sense of being untouched and preserved. We rode the coast and ended up in North Rustico. The Blue Mussel Cafe was on everyone's dining list, and there was a reason for it. The place was great. Lunch was a seafood experience that was the best so far in Atlantic Canada. The ingredients were all local. The seafood probably was caught within the last few days, and the preparation was detailed and delicious. Feeling so content from the brief ride and spectacular lunch, we steered in the direction of the hotel. Tomorrow we'd be off to Nova Scotia to catch the overnight ferry to Newfoundland. Each day was filled with so many experiences. I was truly thankful and grateful for the adventure that continued to unfold. Today we would travel through 2 Canadian provinces, take 1 ferry, and board a second ferry to take us overnight to a 3rd Canadian province. There was a 1 p.m. ferry to Nova Scotia, and we arrived at the harbor in plenty of time. The ferry crossing was fine, and we disembarked from the boat in Nova Scotia right into the rain. The remaining part of the day was cold, wet, and filled with highway riding. Once on Cape Breton Island, we took the southeast side of Labrador Lake. We pulled into the secure area to line up the bike for boarding. The ferry was a proper ship and different from the others. We had a cabin booked, the ship was relatively new, and almost looked more like a cruise ship than a ferry. They called for boarding. We mounted up and rode in on the lower deck. I strapped down the bike on 4 points. We took our wet and muddy bags off the bike and headed up to our cabin. The ship was pristine and so was the cabin. We took a walk around the ship and explored a little.
Hey Jen, we're on the cruise ship. I think I'm recording.
We're on the
Motorcycle downstairs and we got a cabin. Woo-hoo. Oh, I'm so happy.
Happy to be back in the cabin. I set the alarm for an early wake up to have breakfast before pulling into port. Everything was prepared for the morning and for Newfoundland.